Let's see. Okay, you are live. I think that means yes, we are recording. Yay. Hi, Mon Ami. How are you?
Hi, Corey. I'm good.
So what I did is, I only explained this to you really briefly, is I posted on the community people to ask us questions. And I haven't looked at what they asked. I have no idea what they asked. So I'm going to look it up, and you're going to see me not knowing how to use technology. So I'm going to have to try and find it, because this is another thing I hate about the community tab, is that it's really hard to find. And of course, can't find it. Subscriptions, library. Oh, maybe I'll cut this out. How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm fine. Doing okay.
Is it quiet there?
It is. I went out to, let's see, your channel. I think that's where I need to be. I went out to get coffee at an illegal coffee place. I love it. Coffee places aren't supposed to be open. So what they do is they put their shutters down, and then you kind of lean in and say, "Hi, I want takeaway," and then they bring it to you somewhere. So yeah, found it.
Here, everything is open. Here, people are going to their jobs. People are going to schools.
Are they even talking about a lockdown for you?
No, nothing so far.
Okay, so we're under total lockdown because it's the holidays and we have a high rate of people getting sick, and they're afraid the hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. So anyways, this is, for future people, and they can see the date is October 7th. So it's there. Okay, so I found it. We're good. Oh, hold on. So I asked people, no, I don't need to make a comment. So I asked people to ask us questions. And let's see what they said. And hopefully it will be in order of how popular the question was, because people can rate them. They can do thumbs up. So the first one is Nikolai asking, ask Palestinians, why do they have their own refugee? No, this isn't people. People are asking questions that I should ask Palestinians and Israelis, or we should ask Palestinians. No, that's not the point of this. I said we're going to do a Q&A. Although ask Palestinians why they have their own UN refugee agency, UNRWA, we started asking something similar, actually.
We did.
We did.
And I didn't like the question. And I did not like the question. I told you it's not going to be good. People are going to get angry. They're going
to... Why? Explain why.
Okay, so to us Palestinians, we've lost so much. And we feel that the world has done us wrong, and we have suffered so much injustice that we deserve this aid and this assistance. And especially when it's been under attack and the funds have been cut off since 2 years, it's affected the lives of the Palestinians very badly. I mean, refugees here that depend on the money, that depend on the aid and the assistance, have really been affected because they wait for this. Some of them don't need it, but not many. There are very few who don't need it, but most of them do.
Okay. And so even asking, what was his actual questions? Why do the Palestinians have their own UN agency, UNRWA, instead of being under, I'm blanking on its name, the UN refugee agency, the regular one? That I don't know. We didn't actually ask that. We just asked if UNRWA should be transferred to the PA or another group. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we just started that. We still have to ask more people. Okay. Now here's a real question to you, actually, Manar. What does your translator feel about the Palestinian responses to the questions over the years? Does she feel there's a genuine desire for peace by her people or not?
So usually, or not usually, all the time before we go asking, Corey sends me the questions so that I prepare myself. I know what to say, so I can think about who we're going to ask, where we're going to be to ask this. Because if it's something difficult, we might go to places where there are students, where there are more professionals. If it's something a little simpler, we just walk around the streets and see. Now, I used to think that I knew what the answers would be, but there have been so many times that I was surprised by the answers. One of the things that really surprised me was when we asked people if it's allowed to criticize Islam, and one university student said, "We're not allowed to criticize the religion, but we're allowed to criticize the people who explain it." And that was true, and that was very good, and I was surprised that someone that young knew that and knew how to say it very well. Other answers, I mean, unfortunately, they are hurtful. Some answers are funny. Some answers are, I'm sorry to say this, but some answers are just for the camera. Yeah, it's
How many of those answers do you think are just for the camera? Meaning, okay, how many first do you think? What percentage?
percentage. I would say 35 to 40% sometimes are for camera. The rest is pretty truthful.
And when you say for the camera, sorry, when you say for the camera, do you mean for the world, for the image of Palestinians, or do you mean for their families?
That's a good point. For both, Some of them say nice things like, "Yeah, we want peace," and so on, and some of them say, "No, this is wrong. We won't do it. For example, we won't normalize. We don't want peace with them, with the Israelis. It's all Palestine." But actually, they just want peace. They want the 1967 borders. They want to move on with their lives and move forward. But a lot of the times, it's just not allowed, because we should be saying it's all Palestine. But the truth of the matter is, it's 1967 borders, not 1948.
And you think that they, in the end, would accept that?
A lot of us, yes. A lot of us, yes.
Okay. Okay, interesting. But you think everyone wants peace? How many of those, because we just asked this and I'm about to release that video, and a lot of them said when I said, "Do you want peace?" They said yes. And I said, "I mean with the Israelis." And they said, "Oh, no, 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 no." Like but how many of those actually would accept peace with the Israelis? I know they're not going to be happy about it. No one's going to embrace it. But how many would accept it in the end, if it happened?
Most people will accept it. Most of the Palestinians, in my opinion, will accept it. There will be very few who will say, "No, we are against it." But most people are. Because khalas, as I said before, we want to move forward. We want a better life. We want freedom of mobility. I mean, how many people told us, "I can't go to the beach"? Mm-hmm. How many people said that? How many people said, "I can't travel"? Oh.
Yep.
So peace with Israel would get us that.
Okay, next question. Let's see, for me or for you, or both. How have Israelis coped with the lockdowns? Have there been much jobs lost? I have terrible eyesight. Have you been able to cope? Or how have you been able to cope? So first I'll talk about in Israel, because the Israel situation, then I'll ask you about in Palestine. So we've been under lockdown. This is the second one, and it started 2-3 weeks ago. And a lockdown means you're not allowed more than 1 kilometer from your home, unless you have a good reason. Meaning, if you have to go to the hospital, you can. If you need to go to, if you have a job which is required. Most jobs are shut down. I work at the university. The university is entirely shut down. People who work, let's say doctors, obviously, and nurses and social workers, certain people are allowed to go to work, but most people are not. All stores are closed. All businesses are closed. Even lawyers, their offices are closed. They have to work from home. Supermarkets and pharmacies are open, as are bakeries. So how are people coping? Israeli society is a lot about manipulation. There's all sorts, because this is there's sort of a Jewish aspect to this. Of when we used to, 100 years ago, live under the non-Jews, we had to manipulate everything because we weren't allowed to do a lot of things. So this is my opinion. that culture has kind of lived on in Israelis. So, for example, under my apartment, I live on Allenby on the main street in Tel Aviv. There is a cosmetic store. So it's like a Mac store. It's not Mac, but something like that, to picture what it is. And they have been open through both lockdowns entirely because what they do is they put tampons and toothpaste and toothbrushes in the front on a rack. And then they say, well, we have required items. People need to come to us to get their toothpaste. It's very important.
And voila.
And of course, then 99% of the store is lipstick and eyeshadow and I don't know what cosmetics are there. So they've been open the entire time, even during the absolute lockdown when the streets were empty. They're open every day. I've seen a bunch of places do that. So I have my coffee, that I got at a place near here, which they're not supposed to be open either.
But why are they open?
He says they're doing takeaway, and he says he has a person to like a service that will take it to you. But really, you scream your order at him from far away. He makes your coffee and your sandwich, and I have here a bagel with cream cheese, which is very Jewish but not very Israeli. It's hard to find here, and he brings it to you. So I'm very happy. As long as everyone's staying 2 meters apart, I'm very happy with that. How we've been coping with this? Not well. It's very, very difficult to be on lockdown. People gain weight. I gained 2 kilos in the last 3 weeks. So I have to.
After you lost a lot of weight.
After I lost weight. Because in the first lockdown, I went into panic mode and I actually stopped eating. And then I thought, well, if I already stopped eating, I'm going to exercise too, and I'm going to lose some weight. So that was actually so I tried to just eat healthy. In this lockdown, all I'm eating is pasta and schnitzel. So that's not good. So now I have to be very, very careful. So that is our lockdown. I'm not happy about it, but I understand. I'm one of these people who's very paranoid about COVID. I'm in a risk category because I have some medical issues like high blood pressure and high sugar and stuff like that. So I'm very panicky. Every time I hear of somebody who's 50 who dies, I'm like, well, that could be me. That's it. And Manar, I know you guys were in a lockdown at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I couldn't come see you.
No.
Well, that's another thing. I can't film now because there's nowhere to go film. If I leave my house, I could walk around Palestinian towns and film. I can't get there because there's checkpoints of police asking, why are you going to not West Bank, just to get out of Tel Aviv is an issue. So Manar, how are things there? What's going on?
Okay, so during the lockdowns in March and in April, it was amazingly quiet. I mean, the last time it was this quiet was during the 2003, 2002 and 2003 Intifada, when there was a lockdown. There was
Israel locked you down.
Yeah. When there was a curfew by Israel, but this time it was for even longer periods. It was quieter. People stayed inside. It wasn't good because people had to work from home. Those who had jobs worked from home. Those who had jobs that were paid on a daily wage basis, those people suffered. Workers who worked in Israel went to their jobs in Israel and in the settlements, and unfortunately they were bullied and they were not physically attacked, but they were verbally attacked on social media and in society. People were accusing them of bringing the COVID back from Israel into the Palestinian areas. So there was that. After the lockdown, people were scared. People are still scared. There are masks everywhere. It's rare to see a person without a mask unless they're in a car with their family, which is a good thing. I'm not sure about the facts and the numbers, but of course there are people who are dying, people of all ages. I mean, I'm 34 and I've heard of people my age and younger dying Sometimes you can't find certain sanitizers in the pharmacies or in the supermarkets because people are still buying them in bulk. So yeah, but right now people are going to their jobs, to their offices, and schools are back. I live right next to a high school, and the other thing, okay, there's high school, and then there's
What, after? Just
no,
university or college?
the one before high school.
Oh, primary school, grade
Oh,
school.
I live next to a primary school and a high school, so those two are working, and mosques are open as well. So
Yeah, our
gyms are
synagogues
open.
are shut down. Everything's shut down.
Yeah, it's people are getting a little scared as we move closer to winter and closer to colder weather.
Yeah.
But who knows what's going to happen?
Okay. Next question. What's the origin story of this channel, and did its development change something in both your views personally, economic, political, social, religious? Well, I'll start off with the origin of the channel, and then you came in a bit later. It was actually when somebody who was very pro-Palestinian, who had spent 4 days in Israel, was making claims about Israelis. I don't care. You can make claims about Israel and politicians. I couldn't care less. But when people start making claims about the people and what they think when they've spent 3 days with them, that kind of annoyed me. And she actually said, what are you going to do? Go out and ask them? And I thought it hit me that second. I have a video camera. Why don't I just go ask them? I ask people these questions all the time because I'm kind of obnoxious, and I pretend to be more naive than I am because I kind of think I know what they're going to say, although they surprise me too sometimes. But it's just to get a survey of what do people think about different issues. So I play the Canadian card, and I thought, well, I'll just bring my camera with me. And so that's how it started. And originally, I actually had the idea that it was going to be a dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians, which meant I would ask Israelis about Palestinians, and then I would either show Palestinians a video or ask Palestinians what they thought. And I would create, because they can't meet, I'd create this online dialogue. And then I quickly figured out that Palestinians had really no desire to speak to Israelis, really very, very little. Israelis had a little bit of dialogue, a little bit of interest, very little, on understand. They wanted to understand Palestinians, but they don't really want to make any effort to do it. And so then I thought, okay, well, there's these two stories going on, and each one is so different, even though it's about the same conflict. At least I could show the world what do people think on each side, and how, and from their perspective. And that's where it really. That's how it started. And then Mon Ami came in as, because I didn't have any, because I wasn't monetized for a while. So I didn't really have a real translator. I had friends helping me out, and no offense to them, but they're not great translators, which is understandable. Translation is really very, very difficult. Simultaneous translation is even harder because you have to be very, very quick, and, and so, good for Mon Ami.
On the road and on the sidewalks, stopping people, convincing them, please.
So yes, that is. In terms of so I'll ask you, Mon Ami, have your views changed about anything, either side, either your own people or Israelis, since you've been involved in this? And then I'll answer it after. You can say whatever you want. Don't feel any pressure because of me.
No. Don't worry. I mean, we're always honest together. We joke around and we're honest about things, which I love about our friendship and our work relationship. In the beginning, it was pretty stressful because I have worked with Israelis before. I translated for some workshops, for the nonviolent communication workshops and training, but that was not in the heart of the cities, of the Palestinian cities. So it was a little it was very stressful walking around with someone and constantly remembering or trying to remind you that, please just say you're Canadian, don't say you're Israeli. How did it change my views? So I've met Israelis and Jews, of course, Israeli Jews and non-Jews. Uh, it taught me a lot about Israeli society, working with you, spending time with you. It taught me even more about my people, my society, that not everybody thinks the same way. Not everybody wants the same thing. Not everybody wants what we all keep shouting about and what we all keep calling for. As I've said, a lot of people just want to have better lives and move forward. What else? Unfortunately, there have been times where people have disappointed us with some answers, both on camera and off camera. This Corey, working with you has really helped me grow professionally, has really built my confidence, has really, I don't know, it's not just work, it's a lot of fun. So this project really means a lot to me. Knowing you really means a lot to me. We've seen so much, we've met so many people. Sometimes people even recognize you from your voice, remember? Like we would be walking around, you would be talking, and someone would say, hey, I know you. I know your voice. I've heard you. I see your channel. It's not always happy, people. Remember?
No, it's not.
Remember the students in front of that school?
Yeah.
And remember the one time that we went into the refugee camp?
Oh, yeah. Who partway through, it's all, that part's on video. I started to ask him a question, and he said, I know who you are. You're an asshole. And I was like, oh, tell me about that. I'm very comfortable with that. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Okay, so that was last year, remember? It was last year?
I think it was a little longer ago, 2 years ago, something like that, yeah.
Okay, it was 2 years ago. And up to that point, I had told you we are never going into refugee camps because we're supposed to know someone to take us in and take us around. Otherwise, we would get in trouble from the people there. And someone sees us and says, okay, I'll take you around. And then, as you said, he recognized you and knows what you do, and he doesn't like you. And then we were like, okay, let's just turn back and go out. And we never went in there again, or any other refugee camp. Khalas. It's done. So yeah, this project has taught me how to speak to people, how to convince them what they want to hear, to answer what they don't want to hear.
I have a question. Oftentimes you get very uncomfortable about the questions that I ask, and you go, oh, we can't ask that. And I kind of go, let's try one. Oh, and then I notice you usually go, okay, that wasn't that bad. You're right. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe I thought it was more taboo than. And other times it was the opposite. I thought, I don't understand. And then everyone would freak out with the question. When we asked about what do you think of the Palestinian Authority, I was like, what's the big deal? Everybody freaked out about that question.
Remember? Okay, so this was in the first year or the second year that I knew you. We went in the old city of Nablus. And we went, we passed by a bakery, and right next to the bakery, there's a little shop where they make the bread. Where all the work happens, not just the selling. So there were 3 generations of males. There was the older men, there were the young men in their 20s, and there were boys. So at that point, I was still afraid or I was not comfortable you filming people before asking them the question. And so I told them, I'm going to ask you the question first, and then you tell us if you're okay with the question or not. So I asked them, شو رأيكم في السلطة الفلسطينية? What do you think of the Palestinian Authority? First, the older generation laughs. Then the second generation laughs, and then the third one laughs. They all laugh so loudly together, and then I look at you and say, see what happened?
No, I'm listening. Go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Sorry, something happened. Technical issue, sorry. And everybody just laughs. Like, why would you ask that? Do you want to get us in trouble? Do you want to take us to jail? So we had to find another way to reword it. Another question was, and I was freaking out about this question, and I had to word it in a different way. Your question was, what will happen when Abu Mazen dies, the Palestinian president? And I said, you know what will happen. I know what will happen. We don't ask these questions. And you said, let's just ask. And I just get so scared and say, "Khalas, screw it, I'm going to ask." And I tell you, no, we're going to say what will happen when Abu Mazen is no longer president, regardless of what happens to him.
Mm-hmm.
And some people said, "What do you mean? Why? Where will he go?" And I said, maybe he dies, maybe he's no longer president, I don't know. And then they answer.
Mm-hmm.
They give us, some of them give us good answers, some of us give us bad answers. Some of them say, "Oh, may he live a very long life, da da da." What are their questions? "Oh, queers for Palestine. I had no idea how to ask that."
Yeah.
And the evolution one. It's not that I can't translate them, it's just that you have to explain.
Yeah.
And, lay it out. And sometimes I even have to apologize for your questions and say, these crazy foreigners, I even say, you even learned the word. What does crazy foreigner mean?
Ajnabi Majnoon.
There you go.
I know when you're saying it, and I'm like and I always like look away as if I pretend I don't understand. I totally know you could use that. It's fine. Absolutely.
So I even sometimes have to hold up the paper of questions and say, "See all these questions? This Ajnabi won't pay me unless I finish these questions." So, yeah. We've learned ways.
On the Israeli side, I do the same thing. I sometimes you don't hear it always. Sometimes you do. I'll say, "Not my question. Not my question. This is from outsiders." And at least I won't tell them the question, but I'll tell them this is how outsiders see it. People outside of Israel. This is how they see it. Because you could see sometimes, and sometimes I don't, because it's fun to just watch the reaction, or I forget, and it's fun to watch the reaction anyways. They get so offended at the question.
Yeah.
And they think it's my question, so they call on the Israeli side they call me a leftist traitor, and it actually makes me very happy when they do that. It's very funny because I think everyone is so fragile that I've learned is that everyone gets so fragile by being asked a question, and suddenly everyone's so offended. And I know this is an area of high emotions. And conflict is about emotions, mostly. If we didn't have emotions, we wouldn't have conflict. And it brings out even more. It triggers people, to put it into the international parlance, how young people speak today. It really does. Asking these questions, even if someone outside sees it, or Palestinians see it that way, it triggers people because they think it's an attack on them personally.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was like, okay, set that aside, answer it. Tell me how would you answer it? Take out the emotion for just a second and try to answer that, which is not easy because most people don't. And I wouldn't know how to answer it. It's not that I'm not criticizing them by getting emotional or when they get emotional.
I would ask people I would just tell them, I know this is a difficult question. I know the answer. We all know the answer, but people outside don't know the answer. Yeah. We're asking so that people will not get their information only from the news and the politicians. This is what I always start any encounter with. So I would stop people and tell them we're asking these questions, although they're obvious and everybody knows the answer, but everybody here knows the answer, the Israelis and the Palestinians. But people outside have no idea no idea. People outside who only watch the news and the politicians really don't know. So maybe they can hear us, the answers from our mouths instead of just from the news and the politicians.
Yeah, and it's really important.
They agree.
And sorry, what?
That's when they agree to answer. That's when they see the point, or that's when they understand why it's sometimes ridiculous or sometimes asking the obvious.
Mm-hmm. Well, to you, what's obvious, or to me, what's obvious is not obvious to the other group, including Israelis and Palestinians. Israelis will always tell me the Palestinians know what we think. And then I speak to Palestinians, and Palestinians have this very skewed, strange view of what Israelis are, because everyone's so cut off from each other. Plus, they have different histories and they live in these different bubbles where they don't really speak to each other. They don't even watch the same news. Their information is all different. It has a different comes at them from a very different perspective and gives them different information. So no, they don't understand each other. What everyone thinks is obvious to the other, and people will say this to me, like they tell me this. Sorry, Palestinians will, while we're filming, will say, as a Canadian, and I'm like, I actually have no idea what they're talking about. No idea. I mean, sometimes I actually do know what they're talking about because I've been doing this for a while. But a person who, for the first time hearing this, would have no idea what they're talking about, because we all make these assumptions that everyone understands our reality, and they don't. And that's part of why I do this. And it's not what I expected. So that wasn't what I expected to do from the beginning. But it's kind of what it's turned into, and I think that's important. So, okay, let's go on to the next question.
Please.
Where am I? Somebody's asking other questions for me to ask. Okay, Corey, after all this time of questioning Israelis and Palestinians, have you come to a certain conclusion that can be easily described to people who don't live in the region and have no idea why things are the way they are here? No, is the short answer. How do I describe? I mean, there's lots of ways to describe what's going on. There's just so much going on. What I would say is that each side, like what I was just talking about, it's fresh in my mind, so I'll go there, lives in a different reality, and they project their reality onto the other side. And they make a lot of assumptions about that's the reason that they're doing it. So Israelis make assumptions that the Palestinians hate Jews because they're Jews. Palestinians make assumptions that Israel's trying to take all of the land because they're colonizers who came from another place. It's not that either side is totally wrong. There's a grain of truth, I think, in both of those. Oversimplify each other side and each other's reactions and each other's perception of the other. So, do I have any conclusions? I don't think there's anything simple, meaning I don't think there's a simple solution here. I don't think there's a simple way to get to peace. I would personally accept any agreement that anyone came up with if both sides reluctantly agreed. And I know neither side is going to agree to any, two-state solution, a one-state solution, whatever you want to. Some people talk about confederations. You're not going to get everyone agreeing on this. This is, 10 million people live on this land. Oh no, more than that, way more. 12 million people. Everyone has their own opinion, and yeah, you can kind of group them together in certain ways, but there's no consensus on what should happen. But I still think any solution that allows people to feel free and feel that they're getting something is better than what we have now. So I know I don't really have any conclusions other than this is really a mess, and everyone who makes a judgment because their media told them something about Palestinians or Israelis should really come here. Hard to do in COVID, but other times after this, to come here and speak to, and I would say speak to whichever side you're most against. So if you are really pro-Palestinian, go hang out with Israelis. If you are really pro-Israel, go hang out with Palestinians. And argue with them. I mean, I would listen too, but feel free to argue with them. I think that's fine. On camera, you can see that people don't really like to be argued with, but one-on-one, I think it's fine. I think people, when they're in front of a camera, feel that they're speaking on behalf of their entire people and their collective. And one-on-one, there's a little bit, they'll still want to explain how right they are. But I think they're a bit more open one-on-one to other ideas and hearing other people's opinions. But listen, I think people need to learn how to listen. That's
very true. I agree. Yes.
Do you have any conclusions?
My conclusion is, the more you listen to the other side, the more you speak to them, not fight and kill. The more you speak to them, listen to them, whoever you are, you will understand more. You will be closer to a solution. You will have a clearer view of what you want to do and what's the best thing to do. Because otherwise, we're just going to be stuck in this endless loop of violence, endless loop of nothing happening and losing peace of mind, losing land, losing opportunities. There's so much to be gained when we listen to each other, and we're losing so much by wasting so much time by ignoring and not listening and closing our ears. So yeah, I would like to second what you just said, which is come spend time with the people that you don't like or you are against.
Yeah.
You can come with us, you can go on your own. Just try it.
Good point. Okay, next. I would be very interested in hearing the opinion of Jewish people with Spanish origins ancestry about Spain and whether anyone will speak Ladino or has heard of it in Israel. Hold on, there might be more. Toda rabba. So this is obviously somebody Spanish. I'll just answer this because this is more, they want me to go ask people. So yes, everyone's heard of Ladino, of course. All Israelis have heard of Ladino. Ladino is a form of Spanish spoken by the ancestors of people who were exiled from Spain in 1492. So when Muslims and Jews were thrown out of Spain by the Catholics, they went to other places in the world, including here, Turkey, Bulgaria, Holland, Morocco, and they kept with them the Spanish of that time, mixed with a lot of Hebrew, little bits of Hebrew. There are still some older people who speak Ladino. There are some younger people who are trying to relearn Ladino. It's very nice. It's like for those who know Jews, it's like a version, like kind of like Yiddish. I mean, it's like a Jewish language. But if you know Spanish, you know what it is. What do they think of Spain? So there's I get these kind of questions a lot. So we're so many generations from, that was 500 years ago, that they don't have a negative perception of Spain itself. People who are of Ladino heritage, similar to Holocaust survivors, don't have a necessarily negative image of Germany, because Germany has done a very good job of apologizing for the Holocaust, and that was only 70-something years ago. So these are not something that people in Israel really talk about. They talk about Ladino culture. They don't really talk about Spain or Germany in this case, or whatever. Yeah, that's what I say. But maybe I'll make a video about it. So anyways, what do you think? Okay, you know what? We can answer this. I'm not going to do another video because I've already done this. What do you think about the new agreements with Bahrain and UAE? I personally think everything positive is terrific. I am very happy. All peace is good. I wish Palestinians would get on the wagon with us, meaning we would all somehow find a way to coexist and live together and develop as our economies and cultures and live in peace, because war just seems like a waste of time. Palestinians, though, well, what do you think, Manar?
Okay, so this is my own opinion. My own opinion. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. We have so much more to gain from peace, but as all Palestinians say, everyone says, we want a just peace. That's it. We want justice and peace. Yes, that means we will have to compromise. That's my opinion. Are you still there?
Yep. You froze a bit, but I can still hear you.
Sorry. Where did I go? Something happened. Sorry. I think this is it. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, we're back.
Sorry. My own opinion is that I hope we have peace too, and soon, very soon, while I'm still young, because there's so much more to gain from peace than from war. I mean, so many people want to work in Israel. So many people prefer and want the healthcare that Israel has to provide. So many people want the freedom of movement. Everybody wants that, not so many people. So I hope Palestinians do want peace and do see the better side of it and how much more we have to gain from peace.
But the dominant, because we sort of asked about this, we asked about this 2 years ago or a year ago about all these peace agreements, and Palestinians seem to see it as a threat. Every time an Arab country makes peace with Israel, they see it as like a slap in the face of Palestine, of Palestinians. And there's this there's this idea that the more that Israel gains, the more Palestine loses. And I think it's a mistake. That's what happens in conflict. And it's not just Palestinians. Everybody feels that way when they in conflict. So, and I think it is a mistake on behalf of Palestinians. On the other hand, Palestinians have also been screwed over so many times because they're weak. And so it's not entirely without, reason. I don't know. If I were Palestinian, I might also tend to be negative about everything, but I don't think it's a benefit. It just doesn't lead anywhere positive. So, or it doesn't give you anything. So maybe the UAE and all these countries can force Israel, the Israeli government and people, because they're not really open to the two-state solution very much anymore, to any sort of solution. Doesn't necessarily have to be two states, but any sort of solution. I don't see it happening in the current psychology of both Israelis and Palestinians, but who knows? Leaders have come along and convinced people before. Could happen.
Inshallah.
Don't you get scared entering Palestinian villages? Yes, very much. I am very much. I assume, first of all, I'm a paranoid Jew. That's how we're trained. The Holocaust is always coming. Everyone's going to come after the Jews at some point. So yes, I'm always afraid when I cross back into Israel through the checkpoint. I always go, I always breathe like, oh, okay, now I have an army who can come kick ass, if I can't. Yeah. So yes, I do. Over the years, though, I've gotten more and more used to being in Palestinian places because I have no sense of what's threatening. Like I have no sense of, in Israel, I can tell when a situation is getting heated because I can read what's going on. With Palestinians, I can't, because I don't know the language, I don't know the culture. So over the years, though, I've gotten a little bit better at it. I'm still not, I don't think I'm that good, but so I've calmed down a lot. And I think that it's not completely in my head because we've gotten this before. People come up and think we're doing something traitorous to the Palestinian people.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So many times.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I'm always worried that someone is going to use that to be like, what do you do with someone who is going against your people? You do something. And that something could be a knife or beating me up or, stabbing me or beating me up, or I guess kidnapping could happen in times of total, during like an intifada when everything is crazy. Not now, but if things were
don't
chaotic.
Come here. If there ever is an intifada again.
Yeah, then they can't. Because these are also for the viewer. Both cultures are very, I call it mafia, in the sense of when shit goes down and things start to unravel, all the the people who want to get something find a way to get something. So when I was talking before at the very beginning about how Israelis are a little bit manipulative, when it comes in, to selling things this exists also in the Palestinian. This is very Middle Eastern mentality.
Very, very Middle Eastern, very Orient.
When things get a little chaotic, people like to take advantage of that. And so the more structure there is, the more stability there is, the less chance that'll happen. But during an intifada or something happens, on the Israeli side, we have less of it only because we have a more solid structure, which is what I wish for Palestinians, actually. So these things wouldn't happen. But yes, during the second intifada, people were kidnapped and those sort of things happen. So yeah, it's always a bit of a fear. But I still think it's not, look, this isn't Afghanistan. Do
you want to tell the story? Do you want to tell the story or should I about Beit Lahem?
You tell it. I'd like to hear your version.
Okay. What do you mean my version? We were both there. There's no version.
Go ahead. Tell the story.
Okay. So we were in Bethlehem. That's the way you say it in English. Or you say Beit Lahem in Arabic. Now, I always ask you to follow certain rules when we're in the Palestinian areas, which is, first of all, you're Canadian. Mm-hmm. Second of all, Maybe we'll get to the other story later on.
No. No, the other thing is I'm a Christian, and
Okay.
I'm not gay. I'm straight. I'm a heterosexual Christian Canadian. Period.
Yes, you're a straight Christian Canadian.
I'm a traitor to all my peoples. Yes.
Okay, this is when you're in Palestine because it's not very accepted for Israelis to be here, and it's not accepted to be gay, and it's not accepted to be Jewish. So anyway, it's not accepted, but it's something political. Anyway, so this is so when we're in Bethlehem, you're not allowed to speak Hebrew, or you're not allowed to speak Arabic because your Hebrew accent will show, and then people might hurt you, and then they might hurt me, and then how can we, I don't know, escape or find help or whatever. So we're in the center of Bethlehem, and you want to try your Arabic. You've been learning Arabic, and you say something Bethlehem
with an Israeli so an Israeli cha.
Say Bethlehem, Corey.
Bethlehem.
There you go. Okay.
That's not how Palestinians say it.
No. So the guy we're asking jumps and says,
no, it was an entire it was an entire table. There was about 8 people. All of them stared, got up, and walked away without saying a word.
Walked away very quickly, and one of them even said Mossad. So,
I did. Okay.
So that's when the rule of no Arabic ever was created.
Because it slips sometimes. I say something with an Israeli accent, but meaning a place name. It happens because me trying to be fancy speaking Arabic and show off, I know some Arabic. I'm an idiot. Anyways, but for me, to get back to one other thing, 2 things I want to ask. First of all, is for me, in a sense, I'm actually safer than you are because you still have to live there.
Yes. And
you don't have any protection.
Exactly.
I have potentially a whole army and government who would, if I was kidnapped or whatever, would come. That's how I always joke. I mean, that's what I say is I have an army who's going to come avenge my death. You don't have that. And that's actually why I'm actually even more concerned. I'm not concerned about me. I'm more concerned that you will be at risk because when shit goes down in that mafia mentality of like, we're going to get revenge on somebody, that's always my fear. And I know it's a minority. It's not everybody. It's a minority.
Thank you for saying that. Exactly.
But it exists and exists on the Israeli side too. It's not a Palestinian or a Muslim thing. It exists here as well.
Yeah, but Israelis are less welcome, much less welcome here than Palestinians are welcome in Israel. In Israel, people are used to seeing Palestinians almost everywhere.
Yeah.
In the Palestinian areas, we are not used to it. If we hear about an Israeli in the Palestinian areas, we kind of panic because the first thing that we think of is if he's lost or if she's lost, the army might come and create a huge problem. People might get hurt just looking for them. Some people will say, "Oh, they're a spy. They're trying to get information and infiltrate the community and stay there." So yeah. Anyway.
Did you ever feel when you came to the Israeli side, the Jewish side, as you guys say, did you ever feel uncomfortable?
Maybe once when we were close to the Israeli police in front of the Jerusalem Damascus gate. That's all.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Yeah, and I took her to ultra Orthodox neighborhoods, which is funny because there was another Palestinian guy, Israeli Palestinian, and we're just wandering around asking questions. And I feel like you guys were the spies at that point. You're like, wow, this is a whole other world. Yes.
Yes. Wow. It's
and
a whole
people
other world.
ask, are you Jewish? Not because they thought you're Palestinian, but because they just were like talking about religious things and they were just more interested if you're Jewish. That was, I saw your face go, what's going on?
Do we tell the story about when we had to say you were straight Christian Canadian now, or do we say it later?
Which when did we do that?
Remember when we went to a university in Nablus and we were asked to go to the office of the student body political ruling group.
Yeah. So let me give some context. We try to ask students, because first of all, students usually have opinions. I like to ask anybody who has an opinion. I don't really care what the opinion is. Anyone with a strong opinion, great. The stronger the opinion, in a sense, gives good answers. That's how I do it. So we try to ask students. So we try to go to universities and colleges. But the problem always is when we go onto the campuses, they always go, "Who are you? Why are you filming?" So they march us into some office to get permission.
Yes.
As we learned, it's better to just hang out in the parking lots. But okay. So
Lurk,
first we get
lurk in the parking lot.
And just so what? Sorry?
Lurk in the parking lot.
Lurk in the parking lot. Works well. So, and just so people watching know, it's about a 50-50 split. I think sometimes we would get, after a waste of time of 45 minutes meeting with people, they would they either say, "Well, we have to pass this on to the president of the university, come back in 3 weeks and we'll tell you whether or not you can."
Yeah.
Or sometimes they go, "Okay, you can ask everything, but we don't like question number 3. I don't know, something like that, to show them our questions. So it's been a mixed thing. And to avoid this, just because it's a waste of time, we just hang out in the parking lots or outside the gates. So that works well. So, okay, go back to your story of when I was straight and Christian.
So we were in the student body political office, the political student body office, and they're very political. They're very how do I say this? They had very strong political views, and you're not allowed to have other political views, especially regarding Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So we're there, and of course, religion and politics mix here in Palestine. And one of the questions was, would you marry someone who's not from your religion? So we asked all the men, all the young women, and then for some reason, one of them said, someone asked me to ask you, Corey. They said, ask him, would he marry a woman who's not Christian? So I looked at you and I said, like giving you a face, saying, Corey, would you marry a woman who's not Christian? So he smiled and said, well, as a Christian man, yes, I would. And another question was, this was when you put that comment, the translator kicked me under the table. Remember that question?
I don't remember the question itself, but this happens. Because I always say that, just so you know, I always say inappropriate things. By the way, I do this with my own people too. When I'm interviewing religious Jews, I have a friend who's religious who hits me in the back of the head going, "You can't say that." And I go,
yeah.
And so you do that too. It's fine. It's legitimate. I forget. I'm not sensitive. I forget about these things.
Okay. So the other question was, why do people fast in Ramadan? Mm-hmm. And, everybody's giving you the answer that we're supposed to give. It's to get closer to God. It's healthier. It makes your stomach shrink. It makes you eat less. And then for some reason you had to go and say, is that why everybody gains weight in Ramadan or gets fat in Ramadan?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, did he just say that?
But that's all when I hear from Muslims, they're always like, oh, Ramadan, I always gain so much weight.
We do. A lot of us do.
So I'm a person who, I just point out what is the obvious thing. I don't even think that's controversial or that's something you're not supposed to say. I come from a long line of people who say inappropriate things, so I apologize. Everybody I tend to offend. Yes, I still remember when in a video somebody said something about Allah, and I said, "Yeah, who cares about Allah?" And I didn't mean it in the anti-religious sense. I meant as in why is that important? I got in so much trouble in the comments. That's why, not the only reason, but part of the reason I stopped reading comments. What?
Were you with me?
Yeah. You hit me. And I went,
hit you?
Oh yeah, I can't say that. Yes. Because I do that with Jews too. It's not, it's not anything against Islam. I say inappropriate. Look, I have a kid who, in a carpool in Canada, declared there is no Santa Claus. And I went, okay. And the father who was driving stared at me and said, shut your kid up. You can't say that. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. So hopefully no 8-year-olds are watching this and, find out there's no Santa Claus.
Kids go to bed. Oh.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. I already forgot what the question was we were on. So let me go back to this. Okay, let's do 1 or 2 more because we're almost at an hour. Okay. Corey, which political party did you vote for in Israeli elections? Which elections? We've had 15 in the last year. I voted Kahol Lavan, blue and white, once or twice. I can't remember. I voted Meretz a couple of times. I voted Labor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anyone else I voted for. I am tend to be center. I'm sort of a little bit more right-wing on security issues, a little bit more left-wing or very left-wing when it comes to social issues. So it kind of depends on what's going on. I would vote for anybody. I don't really like the Likud because of the way they've been acting the last 10, 15 years, and cannot stand Bibi as I just think he's just full of ego. And by the way, I cannot stand Lapid for the same reason. It's just about his ego. I cannot stand people who are about their ego. On the other hand, our Ruby Rivlin, who is our president, sorry, I'm going into details, is very right-wing. I do not agree with him politically. I would vote for him in a second. He's terrific because he's very fair on social issues. He's very fair when it comes to racism. I mean, he really wants Arabs and Palestinians to live equal, happy lives. Those are the issues that are important to me. So, I mean, not just the Arab issue, but many. I want everyone here to feel that they're part of this system. So that's who I generally vote for. Do you believe the PA residents really want a state in 67 borders, and why? Well, this was directed at me, but I'm going to ask. You already answered this. You're saying, I'll rephrase it in a different way. Do they want a state in 67 borders? No, they want all of Palestine. Would they accept a state in 67 borders? I think maybe if they had a strong leader who stood up and said, and gave them good reasons, I think so. And I think it's better. I think it's not a great solution, but it's the best solution of all the bad solutions. So, and why is that? I'll answer this just because I have the thought in my head. Well, it's the best solution of all the bad solutions because there is no good solution. Everybody is even though we're very separated, we're also very mixed, and in some ways, meaning, a Jewish area and an Arab area, whether in Israel or the West Bank, are really next to each other. It's very hard to separate, and it's also very hard to live together. So the reason I don't think a one-state solution would work is there would be an imbalance. First of all, neither side would accept it because what would that state be? Palestinian or Jewish? And neither side is going to agree to the other at all, period. And then people say, no, but you need to do a Canada and you'll have it'll be the United States of, and neither side will agree to that because Muslims will say, well, wait a second, I'm not giving up on my Islam and my Palestinianhood, my Palestinianness. And Israelis will say, I'm not giving up on my Israeliness and my Judaism. And under a confederated state, a federal state, it wouldn't work, or someone would have to show them how it would work. It's very complicated. So in a two-state solution, at least everyone knows they don't want it, but they know what it is. So that's my belief. And I think if everyone respected rule of law, it could work. That's my view. Do you have anything to add or say?
The thing that I agree with you, of course, I agree with everything that you said, but the thing that I agree with you on the most is Palestinians do want all of Palestine back, but we would agree, we would accept the 1967 borders without these settlements. That's all I'll add.
Okay, so would you think, because a lot of settlements, my issue is an economic thing, it would cost so much money to move all those 200,000 people, something like that, from settlements. So could you just redraw the border so that the big settlement blocks are in Israel? Israel gives Palestinians other land that's now Israel to Palestine, an equal amount, one-to-one swap. That it's not exactly, you're not taking away all the settlements, you're getting rid of some of the smaller ones, and giving Palestinians a sense that they got something out of it. Do you think that could work?
I think that could work, and it has to be done very soon because almost all settlements are expanding. So the small ones are becoming bigger. And where there aren't any settlements, they're now creating some settlements. As you've heard of youth, Hilltop Youth, and so on. So this has to be done very, very soon. I mean, it's plausible, but it has to be done soon before more expansions happen.
Somebody is asking me, what do I think of non-Orthodox denominations of Judaism? I personally don't care because I don't believe in God. So I mean, I think it's great. I think plurality in religion and in society is terrific because everybody has different views, and I think that's great. So even if I don't believe, I think actually a lot of my friends are very much religious, believing people. And even if I don't agree, what does that have to do with anything? I don't agree with a lot of things. So what? I mean, we all have to live in the same country, and who cares? So I think that's great. In terms of in Israel, I think that's what he's alluding to. Have never gained significant ground in Israel. You're right. It's considered almost like non-Jews to Israelis. They don't understand it. Doesn't matter. It's an internal Israeli Jewish thing. I personally think it's great. I have no issue with it. Which, by the way, so Israelis, while at the same time they don't understand reform and they think the reform movement are a bunch of non-Jews acting ridiculous, at the same time, they actually do all the same things that reform Jews do. They don't keep kosher the same way. They will pray. They don't have an issue with praying men and women together necessarily, but as soon as you make something sort of more official and codified, suddenly it's like they feel like they're missing out on the Judaism of their parents and grandparents. So they just feel the sense of loss, which I think they're being ridiculous, but you know, whatever. There's nothing I can do about that. It's getting into a lot of Jewish issues. No, I'm not going to answer those. As you claim to be an atheist, I just did. Do you agree that the land belongs to the Jews based on the Bible? No. I believe the land belongs, Israel belongs to Israel because Israel is by international law is recognized internationally by other countries. That's what international law has to say. It's a country, and every country has the right to define itself in its way. Now, I believe in a Jewish state as a people because my people have been abused over history. I believe in Palestinian rights for the exact same reason. Palestinians are the Jews of, in the last 100 years, of the way the Jews were treated for the last 2,000 years. And so why would I be selfish and say I deserve a state and they don't? So that's in short form my view. Does the land belong to the Jews because of the Bible? No, but no, in my view, no. A lot of Israelis believe that, but I don't. Why did you move from Canada to Israel? Would you do it again if you knew what is the path you would take? Wow, that's a bad question. Okay, why did I move to? No, I'll explain why in a second. I moved to Israel for a couple of reasons. I found Israel incredibly interesting. Canada is so boring. It's always everything here is interesting. I just went out and I can yell at people here. I can't do that in Canada. I married an Israeli I met an Israeli and then got married to him. And we raised a child here. We moved back to Canada, but came back, yada, yada. I don't really feel Israeli. When I'm in Canada, I feel Israeli because I feel like I'm kind of pushy and aggressive, and Canadians aren't. But that's more about my mother, who's like that. But when I'm in Israel, I feel very Canadian. I feel like my values are very, very Canadian. Would you do it again? No, because here's the thing. In Israel, salaries are very, very low. They're actually much lower in Palestine. Costs are very, very high. Costs in Israel and Palestine are similar. There's a little less in Palestine, but yes. So there's a big gap. Compared to Canada, you make a lot more money and things don't cost that much. In Israel, you don't make a lot of money. things cost a lot, and in Palestine you make very little money and things cost a lot. So it depends where you want to live. And in that sense, as I'm 50, no, I think I screwed myself over living here. I have no real, I mean, I have a pension, but it's a crappy pension. And I'm in a boat with a lot of people. Israelis all feel the same. We're on the OECD. We're one of the, in terms of income inequality, no, that's not the right phrase. In terms of salary versus cost of living, we're close to the bottom of OECD. Palestine's not in there, so just the Western countries. So no, I screwed myself over. On the other hand, I had a very interesting life. So that's my thing to say. Oh, here's one for you. For the Palestinians' point of view, are there any ideas or thoughts from them you can agree with? Oh, they mean me, I thought. So yes, and then I'll let you speak to this. They feel they've been screwed over historically and today, and I agree with them. They have been, because they're a weak, small group. Sadly, power seems to win. It's sad. So yes, I agree with them in that sense. I agree that there's been an injustice. Absolutely, 1948, before 1948, since 1948, absolutely. I would say though that there's lots and lots and lots of groups around the world who have had very similar injustices, and sometimes worse injustices. And I would say, well, yeah, I'd say that every group, or Palestinians and every group, Israelis are the same, tend to get self-obsessed, and they tend to think that they're the only ones. Israelis do this too. So I don't think that's healthy. But they have a point. Palestinians absolutely have a point about how hopeless the situation is. You pointed this out to me, mon ami, that you said once, I was complaining about how third world this country is, Israel is, and you said, but you have infrastructure, you have highways, you have a train system. I don't know if you use those words, but and you're right. Like, you guys don't have any of that. You don't have a proper universal healthcare system. You don't have proper hospitals. You don't have proper roads, and the roads that do exist are mainly either Israelis created them for the settlers, but Palestinians also travel on them, or because of international aid, and which actually I partially blame Palestinian Authority for, because they've done nothing in 20-something years to develop an economy. Nothing. Remember when somebody said, "Can I go to an industrial zone in Palestine?" And you laughed. You said, "There's no industrial zone. We don't have any of that." Now there is, technically there are a couple of little bits and pieces.
Little, exactly.
But it's little compared to how Israel developed itself. That they were kind of smart. They did develop a lot of different industries, and that's what you need to do. And Palestine didn't do that. So we got off topic. Anyways, yes. Anything you'd like to add, or?
I just like to say that sometimes from our discussions, we come up with questions to ask people, like the one that the discussion that you mentioned about how you said Israel is a third world country, and I said you have infrastructure, universal health care, and so on and so forth. And I said Palestinians are jealous of, how Israel is built and what Israel is and what Israel has. And that's when the question of that's when we asked the Palestinians, I'm not sure of the question exactly how it was, but the idea was, what does Israel have that you wish you had? Or yeah, so people said roads, infrastructure, and healthcare. So
yeah, it's important. So as much as I am frustrated with Israel at the moment, because I feel like it's becoming a failed state during COVID, yes, it's not that bad. Do you want to do one more question?
Just one last point about how you're disappointed by how Israel is handling the COVID thing. Are you ever gonna really consider coming and living in the West Bank and seeing how it is, really?
I really want to. Actually, my big issue, so this is a plan I've sort of had for years, is to move to the West Bank, sort of move to a Palestinian area, and I prefer not a city. I don't want to live in Ramallah. I would live in Nablus, maybe not Bethlehem, or I would live in a village. I would live in, I want to live with regular people. I don't want to live with one of my pet peeves is when I go to Ramallah and I see the few foreigners, there aren't many, who live there, and they're all sitting in those fancy cafes and restaurants. And I'm like, really? That's what you do? You moved all the way to the Palestinian area so you could sit in a fancy cafe? Really? That's what you want to do?
Then
I don't want to do that.
Be the guy who lives in a studio apartment or in a student building or something, and not go to the fancy cafes. Go to the popular cafes, the ones that are only for men. I can find you there. I'll wave from across the street when I see you in a only men's cafe. Bam.
No, I feel first of all, I've been in those, and I feel very uncomfortable. Anyways, a whole other thing. No, my bigger issue is first of all, I need to have a car. Although maybe I'd be able to afford it because I'm paying less rent. So maybe I'd be able to do it. My biggest issue is obviously they'd figure out that I lived on I speak Hebrew. I have Israeli citizenship. I was never in the army, but still. And so I would have to move in and have my own little mafia of some family who sort of takes responsibility for me. Like, meaning someone in the Palestinian side who's like, no, he's okay. He's okay. Don't worry. He's not Mossad. He's not Shabak. He's not. That's what I would need. And I don't know how to do that. So, and I don't want to create.
I can tell you how. Do you want me to tell you how? And I'll tell everybody how. You can keep this or remove it. Get a job with an international organization. Get a job with the Canadian international organizations here, and ta-da.
Yeah,
they're your mafia.
Online speaking Hebrew, and they'll say, he's Mossad. He's Mossad. No,
maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll help your chances by them thinking that he knows the culture here. He won't embarrass us as much as others.
I embarrass everybody. This is a problem. My own personality. No, so I want to do it because I think one of the things I did as a Canadian is moving to Israel is I got to know the language and the culture simultaneously, because that's how you learn, listening to people. And I want to do that on the Palestinian side because I really want to understand. I want to wrap my head around all these things you talk about. And that you go, you know why. And sometimes I'm like, I don't understand what you guys are talking about. No clue, because it's a very different worldview. And I really want to get into that headspace and that worldview as a way to bridge between the two or the three, between Israelis and Palestinians, but more so between the international community and Palestinians and Israelis. Be able to explain the narratives well. And it would help because I lived in Israel for so long, I can do that with the Israeli Jews, also because I'm Jewish. So I grew up Jewish. I know that weird paranoia we have about everything. So it's helpful to me. Still, Israelis are very different than Jews outside. But still, I because I lived here for so long, I can explain it better. Not perfectly, but better. And I want to be able to do that with Palestinians. So, and learn Arabic. I would love to be able to speak Arabic. But, as I get older and older, chances of that happening are less. So, yeah, that's that. Maybe I'll do that during COVID. Anyways, I think that's it. We've been on for an hour and I can't see the time, an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mon Ami, for this.
Thank you, Corey, for this.
And thank everybody for sending questions. If I didn't get your question, I'm sorry. I can't get to everything. And some of these questions were actually meant as questions that I should go ask Israelis and Palestinians. So that's it. Also, we're old and tired, so we got to go rest. We got to go take a nap.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Keep watching.
Please.